Good morning. This year, Canada is expected to export 26.2 million tons of wheat to over 80 countries. This will make Canada the third largest exporter of wheat and top exporter of high-quality, high-protein wheat in the world for the second year in a row. Hello, I'm Mark Walker, Vice President of Markets and Trade at CWRS Canada. It's my pleasure to welcome you to CWRS Canada's Global Markets for Canadian Wheat Key Insights webinar. Before we get started, I have a few reminders to share. Regarding interpretation, interpretation will be available in French. This can be selected by clicking the globe symbol option on the bottom of the screen as shown on the slide and selecting your language. There will also be a short question and answer period at the end of the presentation, and you are welcome to submit your questions for our experts throughout the webinar. We will be taking questions using the Q&A function only. You can find the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen near the center. If your question is not answered live today, we will respond to it by email after the webinar. Please ensure that you're logged in with your email address so we can get in touch with you afterwards. If you think of another question after the session, please reach out to us by email. Our contact information can be found at cwrscanada.ca. Moving on to our agenda. Here's a look at our agenda for today. We'll be examining 6 global markets for Canadian wheat: the United States, Mexico, Peru, Morocco, Indonesia, and Bangladesh. I would like to mention that this session is being recorded, so it can be watched again later and shared with colleagues. We will notify everyone who registered when the recording is posted, and we will also be sending attendees a survey by email for feedback on the webinar. If you are new to our organization, we are the National Not-for-Profit Industry Association representing the Canadian cereal grains value chain. We're dedicated to supporting the Canadian cereals value chain, including farmers, exporters, developers, processors, and our customers around the world with a focus on trade, science, and sustainability. We value relationships and work with government and stakeholders to provide timely, expert technical information and deliver a best-in-class customer experience. Each year, CWRS Canada engages with key markets for Canadian cereals. This targeted outreach happens in-market during our new crop trade and technical missions and at our facilities in downtown Winnipeg, where we provide training, programs, and webinars for customers, industry, and growers. In just a few moments, you'll meet some of our experts who will share with you about the top 6 international markets for Canadian wheat. Today's webinar will focus only on wheat. But first, let's get started with a look at what we do at CWRS Canada and why we do it.
We know Canadian cereals. Not those cereals, these cereals. The kind millions of people rely on for their business, for their livelihood, for every meal of the day. We're proud because Canadian farmers grow the highest quality wheat, barley, and oats in the world.
And we're not just saying that.
We have the data that proves it, because that's what the world needs. Information from experts who know precisely how to turn this into this, and this, and this. It's why we nurture relationships before the seed is even planted. Because when we succeed, Canadian farmers succeed. So do developers, processors, customers, and exporters in over 80 countries all over the globe. So let's keep growing. The best in the world is only getting better.
Now, as I mentioned earlier, Canada is expected to export 26.2 million tons of wheat to over 80 countries in 2025. Canadian wheat holds a unique position in international markets due to its functionality and consistency. High-protein Canada Western Red Spring Wheat, or CWRS, is valued in markets around the world as an improver wheat for blending with lower protein wheats from other origins. Canada Western Amber Durum, or CWAD, is favored by producers of high-quality pasta and couscous due to its high protein content, high semolina yield, and bright yellow color. Canadian soft red winter wheats, primarily Canada Eastern Soft Red Winter Wheat CESRW, are used for the production of cookies, crackers, cakes, and other end products that do not require high protein content nor as strong of gluten properties. Each year, we produce the new wheat crop report. You can find our analysis of the 2024 wheat crop on our website under Growing Cereals. In the report, you'll find technical data that provides information on the quality of CWRS, CWAD, CPSR, and CESRW. If you are interested in the quality information on Canada Western Red Winter, CWRW, please email us. Wheat is a staple food for 35% of the world's population and provides more calories, averaging 20% for calories and protein, than any other crop, and is used in hundreds of thousands of end products. The versatility of Canadian wheat in a diverse range of end products has resulted in widespread global acceptance and steady demand in global markets. Alone or blended with wheats of other types, Canadian wheat supports the production of high-volume pan breads, hearth and flatbreads, pastries, cookies, crackers, noodles, pasta, and couscous in over 80 countries. In the 2024-2025 growing season, Canadian wheat production is estimated at nearly 35 million tons, which is a 6% increase from last year and 9% higher than the five-year average being 2020 to 2024. Cereals Canada programs and technical support initiatives develop relationships and communication channels that can be leveraged to promote the use of Canadian wheat in customers' end products, collect market intelligence, and address emerging market access issues. I now want to bring on screen our panel of experts for today. We have Elaine Sapunik, Vice President of Technical Services, Krista Zuzak, Director of Crop Protection and Production, Lisa Nemeth, our Director of Market Support and Training, and Leif Carlson, our Director of Market Intelligence and Trade Policy. The first market that we're going to explore with you today is the United States. However, before I hand it over to our panelists, I'd be remiss if I didn't touch on the current tariff situation between our two countries. I'd like to start by noting, of course, Cereals Canada is seized with ongoing tariff developments in the U.S. We're working with partners on both sides of the border in pursuit of resuming North American free trade. These tariffs will have significant negative impacts on the supply chains on both sides of the border. Canadian and American family farms, small businesses, exporters, and jobs unquestionably rely on rules-based free trade to source ingredients and market finished food products. The tariff uncertainty is already having a negative impact on our trade, and we expect that the reimposition of tariffs would increase food manufacturing costs in the U.S., resulting in further inflation in America. Canadian governments need to work constructively with U.S. counterparts across all levels of government to resolve the current trade dispute. Making sure that business risk management programming for producers will be able to respond to current and future trade disruptions is essential. Additionally, increasing agri-marketing program cost-sharing ratios and increasing overall funding envelopes to help associations further diversify exports to reliable markets is necessary, now more than ever. I'd like to now invite Leif Carlson and Elaine Sapunik to share some information about the U.S. market and the work that goes on there.
Thanks very much, Mark. As Mark stated, with the recent developments in North American trade, I think there's a larger focus on understanding Canada-US trade in agricultural products. And I'd like to talk about that relationship as it relates to Cereals Canada. The US is a really valued user of Canadian cereals crops, and over the past generation, I think cereals trade has increased. Just looking at the past 5 years, the United States was our 5th largest export market for non-durum wheat, our 4th largest market for durum wheat, 2nd largest customer for barley, and our largest customer of Canadian oats. This trade typifies the close relationship that Canada's had as an ingredient supplier to US food processors who might mill or otherwise transform these crops into ready-to-eat foods. Using Canadian ingredients creates jobs for the US companies that process them and creates affordable food options for US and Canadian consumers. Definitely supplying cereals grains is a big part of that trade. Canada averages about 1.3 million tons of non-durum wheat exports and about 500,000 tons of durum exports to the US. Our close proximity and harmonized regulations have made Canada by far the largest source of imported wheat to US food processors. Our grain trade with the US is also characterized by the use of our rail system. Canada's railways, Canadian National and Canadian Pacific, Kansas City are integrated with the rail networks in the US, and this facilitates cross-border movement of goods. And unlike our Canadian exports to overseas markets, which start on rail but ultimately are delivered by ocean vessel, for the US, on average, over half of our exports to the US move by rail. Many North American businesses operate and trade products on both sides of the border. Canada exports processed cereals products like partially processed oats, barley, and wheat to US food manufacturers. Canada is also a significant producer of finished baked products, and these go to retailers and consumers in the US every year. Canada supplies over 7 billion worth of these food products into the US each year. I do want to note that trade is a two-way street though for us. In return, Canadian farmers purchase machinery and inputs from US suppliers. Canadian millers and food processors buy ingredients and other inputs from the US. This is why any cross-border trade disruptions in food, in ingredients, or other inputs will increase costs for consumers, hurt returns for farmers, and reduce the competitiveness of the North American agri-food industry. And lastly, when we talk about trade with the US, I'd like to mention that Canadian-US trade involves all US states. We do trade a lot with border states, but some of the largest users of cereals and cereal products include large population states like Illinois, California, Pennsylvania, New York, Ohio, and Texas. But right now I'd like to invite Elaine to talk more about how Canadian cereals are used in the US market.
Thanks, Leif. In terms of quality, both Canadian wheat and US wheat are considered high quality wheats around the world, and they often compete against each other in various markets with buyers or mills that are needing a high quality wheat as part of their wheat blend. CWAD is exported to the US for the production of pasta products, and there are several major large pasta manufacturers in the US. CESRW is being used by major manufacturers for the production of cookies and crackers. And CWRS is used for baked products, including high volume pan breads, especially in industrial bakeries. It's important to remember that the US is a sophisticated and established market, and therefore they do not require any technical support or very much at all. There are numerous facilities in the US that can provide technical support to US manufacturers and mills if it is required. And with that, I'd like to turn it back over to Mark.
Thanks, Elaine. Thanks, Leif. Next up, we're going to head south of the border and learn about Mexico with Lisa and Krista. But let's first hear from Lisa about the customer support that Cereals Canada provides to our global markets.
Thanks very much, Mark. Yes, before we move to the 5 remaining countries we're going to be talking about, I just wanted to take the opportunity to have some comments about our customer support programming, because you're probably going to hear them mentioned throughout this webinar. So first of all, if we look at customer programs that are held in Canada, we do this to showcase our technical capabilities behind the support Cereals Canada provides. And also we bring customers in so we can outline Cereals Canada initiatives that work to keep trade and markets open. We also have the opportunity here to show participants the full value of our value chain so that they can see this systems approach to quality that arrives with the product at their door. So we take the opportunity to show them a farm, we show them an elevator, we take them to the port, they get to talk to a grower, and it's a really great opportunity for customers to see our whole value chain. When we do support in market, we may do seminars, company-specific visits, or technical workshops to showcase the quality of Canadian wheat. One of the big things that we do in market are our new crop trade and technical missions. Last year, we interacted with 18 countries over 4 missions. And these are the opportunity to optimize customer knowledge of our new crop of wheat because it changes every year a little bit. And so we let them know about the functionality of this year's crop. We discuss market access priorities and also build upon the great customer relationships that we have with these markets. If you are curious about the 2024 new wheat crop report, you can go to Cereals Canada's website, cerealscanada.ca, and you will find a link to this report on the main page. The last thing I want to mention about customer support are our market access missions. So of course, Cereals Canada also works very hard to maintain market access for Canadian cereals. And our staff will engage with customers and regulators around the world to prevent market access disruptions. And when we're faced with some of these challenges, we will work to resolve them to keep cereals moving from Canada to our global customers. So we undertake these market access missions to further dialogue on possible solutions to potential or current trade disruptions due to market access issues. I just want to mention too the value of our Canadian trade commissioners, because in all markets, we work very closely with our Canadian trade commissioners to set up this in-market programming and also to bring participants here to Canada for programs. So I'll pass now to Krista for some overall comments on Latin America before we move into the Mexican market.
Thanks, Lisa. Latin America is a diversified market for Canadian wheat, so we see steady purchases of CWRS, CWAD, CPSR, and CESRW. In countries with high bread consumption, flour mills that serve commercial bakeries often favor CWRS for consistent, high-quality bread flour. CWAD or CWAD, CWRS, and CPSR are used in pasta production. And in recent years, we've also seen interest from some customers about instant noodle production. In Latin America, there tends to be steep competition between Canada and the United States for the high-protein wheat market. While Canada has a clear edge over the United States in important markets like Colombia, Peru, and Ecuador, the United States dominates the substantially larger market in Mexico. On average, 60% of Canadian non-durum wheat exports to Mexico consist of CWRS, which is used in industrial bakery production and for blending with lower protein wheat from other origins. Canada Eastern wheat accounts for about 24% of Mexico's wheat purchases from Canada, making Mexico the leading export destination for Canadian Eastern wheat. Some applications of Eastern wheat are for cookies and baking. 2 years ago, I was lucky enough to be on the Latin America New Crop Mission, and I had the opportunity to visit a cookie production plant. It was fascinating, and I cannot even describe to you the smell in there. Over the last 5 years, Canada has exported 676,000 tons of non-durum wheat to Mexico on average per year. This represents about 4% of Canada's average annual non-durum wheat exports. In 2023, Mexico was the world's third largest user of wheat flour, purchasing approximately 7 million tons of wheat flour for their use in food ingredients. Mexico's consumption of wheat flour is also expected to increase to reach 7.9 million tons by 2028. At Cereals Canada, we also conduct market access monitoring and work with trading partners. Canadian representatives from organizations like Cereals Canada work with other industry organizations as well as government representatives as part of the North American Trilateral Technical Working Group on Pesticides. This was first established under the former North American Free Trade Agreement provisions on sanitary and phytosanitary measures, which include Canada, the US, and Mexico. This working group aims to understand and at times coordinate approaches to pesticide issues related to free trade between the three countries. Just as the technical working group prioritizes strong relationships for effective coordination and communication, our travel missions similarly rely on cultivating and strengthening connections with customers and other stakeholders. Lisa was the lead on the 2024 New Crop mission to Latin America, and I will pass it back over to her.
Thank you, Krista. Yes, you're right. I was lucky enough to travel in Latin America this year and did visit Mexico. In this visit, we discussed harvest data for CWRS, CPSR, CWAD, Durham, and this information was presented by Cereals Canada. As well, Canada Eastern Soft Red Winter was presented by Grain Farmers of Ontario. The soft red winter is used in cookies and biscuits or other lower protein products like cake and pastries in this market, where CWRS and CPSR are typically used in bread products and blended also to meet the quality needs of the many different products produced in Mexico. Canada Western Amber Durum data has not been presented the last 2 years in Mexico because the durum imports from Canada stopped in 2021 as the domestic production in Mexico was meeting their local needs. In 2024, data for durum was presented because there is a drought in the durum production area in Mexico, and it's drastically reduced the availability of durum to this domestic market. And this is necessitating the return to imports. 2 of the largest durum mills or pasta producers were in attendance at our new crop seminar to learn about the quality of the 2024 crop. And since then, Cereals Canada has reached out to their Mexican milling organization, Canamalt, to offer any technical support for their return to the use of Canada Western Amber Durum. Other support to Mexico in the past has included company-specific technical programs in Canada, and also they have been invited to attend our biannual Latin America programs. Mark, I'm going to pass it back to you.
Thanks, folks. Next up, we'll head south of the equator to explore market dynamics in Peru with Leif and Krista.
Thanks, Mark. South America is a very important buying region for Canadian cereals as well. South American buyers have increased their purchases of Canadian wheat over the past 10, 15 years. And now countries like Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru rely on Canada as their primary wheat supplier. Peru is the largest market for Canadian wheat in the Latin American region. Over the past 5 years, we've exported 1.3 million tons of non-durum wheat to Peru, and this represents about 7% of Canada's average wheat exports. In terms of the type of wheat that Peru has been buying, they prefer CWRS, but they'll also import blends of wheat, customer-specified blends, which often include a base of CWRS or Canada Prairie Spring Red with other wheats mixed in that meet the customer specifications. And with the growth that we've had in South America and in Peru, Canada is now the main supplier of imported wheat to Peru. In that market, we're competing with US and Argentina who are active, but we're leading that market. And that's important because in Peru, bakery products are a big part of their demand. And we know that in Peru, over 60% of their flour supply is going to baked products. And that's the market segment where Canadian wheat really excels. And therefore, our demand for Canadian is high there. But Peru is also Canada's largest market for durum wheat in the Latin American region. On average, Peru's imported over 100,000 tons each year, with an average value of more than over $50 million. And it's also a market where Canadian durum has excelled, and Peru sources almost all of its durum imports from Canada. And again, I think this is important because Peru is one of the largest consumers of pasta within the Latin American region. In Peru, pasta is second only to bread in terms of end product consumption in that country. Pasta is also a growth area and expected to be a growth area in Peru, and pasta consumption is expected to grow faster than what we've seen for bread consumption. And therefore, Canada plans to continue to offer our market support focused on the benefits of Canadian durum wheat. As we've heard, Peru is part of our new crop outreach, and we always get really good attendance when we present in this region. And Cereals Canada will continue to work and strengthen our relationship with Peruvian millers to support their understanding of how to use Canadian wheat to get the most out of our quality. And we'll be having a technical exchange planned for Peru upcoming in 2025. I've talked a lot about the demand in Peru. Cereals Canada's work also ensures that our wheat is going to meet Peru's regulatory requirements. I'd like to pass the floor to Krista to talk more about that.
Thanks, Leif. As Leif mentioned, Cereals Canada also engages in market access issues, including sanitary and phytosanitary concerns around Canadian cereals. Cereals Canada's trade advocacy activities work alongside our market development and market support services to provide value for customers. We also recognize that in an unpredictable trade environment, Canada's cereal sector really needs to have the tools and relationships in place to be able to react quickly when we have changes in market conditions. Our market access strategy supports policies and approaches to minimize trade disruptions and maximize those trade opportunities. Peru is a great example of this type of market access work. In November 2024, the government agency within the Peruvian Ministry of Agriculture called SENASA published updated import requirements for Canadian wheat. A long-standing phytosanitary concern regarding creeping thistle seed in Canadian wheat shipments has been addressed through updated import regulations, which have replaced the provisional requirements that were in place since 2019. Cereals Canada engaged with the Canadian Food Inspection Agency and industry contacts in Peru to resolve this significant market access risk that was related to having a zero tolerance for weed seeds that were an issue for Canada's wheat exports going into this market. Rather than pursuing the zero tolerance approach, which can be challenging to implement practically, Peru has adopted post-entry measures with new requirements taking effect March 1st of this year. Interestingly, a similar weed seed concern around creeping thistle hindered market access of Canadian wheat into Vietnam. And a similar solution was applied, and their pest list was revised to achieve a positive outcome for renewed market access into Vietnam as of 2023. Both of these success stories were based on the outcomes of our industry-to-industry engagement and coordination across the Canadian value chain. The outcomes in Peru in particular reflect the value of continued dialogue and relationship building with industry stakeholders in key markets. Although Peru is a large buyer of Canadian durum wheat, other large buyers use our durum for purposes other than pasta, such as Morocco's use for couscous. And with that, I'll pass it back to you, Mark.
Thanks for that, Krista and Leif. Just a reminder to folks that we will be taking questions at the end, and to please use the Q&A function for those questions. Next up, we'll head across the Atlantic Ocean to Morocco with Lisa and Elaine. Renowned for its quality, Canada Western Amber Durum, CWAD, is in demand around the world. Over the last 5 years, over 22.6 million tons of Canadian durum was exported to 51 countries, including Morocco, Algeria, Italy, the United States, Peru, and Japan. I'll pass it over to Lisa now.
Thank you, Mark. Yes, Morocco is a large market. It is our second largest export market for Canadian durum wheat. and accounts for 20% of Canada's average durum exports. Not only is it large, but it is a very quality conscious market. Morocco imports #1 Canada Western Amber durum from Canada. Durum wheat accounts for about 25% of Morocco's total wheat consumption. And over the last 5 years, Canada has dominated the Moroccan market for imported durum. And we hold an average market share of 92%. So that's quite significant. Morocco has also sourced small volumes of durum from France, Spain, the US, and Turkey. And Elaine, I'll pass it over to you for the quality side of things.
Thanks, Lisa. I've been fortunate to visit and spend time with mills and processors in Morocco a number of times, and most recently in December of 2024 on our new crop mission. From my experience, there's 3 parameters that Moroccan millers and processors most appreciate in CWAD, and that would include color, color, and color. If the wheat kernel has good color, that means the semolina or the milled product produced from it will have good color, which in turn means that the end product that's produced will have good color as well. And I think we would all agree that humans make decisions on quality based on visual cues first. Moroccan millers mill durum wheat primarily into semolina, various particle sizes, depending on what end product it is used for. If mills in Morocco are unable to source durum wheat, they will source it from other locations, as Lisa mentioned, but the preference is always for Canadian durum wheat. The main end product that's produced from durum in Morocco is couscous. This is a staple food that the families would consume traditionally as a meal on Friday evenings. Although there is commercially prepared couscous in every grocery store, and it has become more popular due to urbanization as well as more women in the workforce. And there will be entire grocery store aisles that are full of couscous of different particle sizes and different brands as well. Moroccans consume generally less pasta than other North African countries, but they would like to see pasta consumption increase. They have found that some of the consumers in Morocco have some misplaced beliefs regarding the nutritional benefits of pasta products, and therefore consumption has remained low. And they have requested support from Cereals Canada initiative, What About Wheat, to help them overcome this issue. Morocco is also a supplier of couscous and pasta to various European and African countries, and the exports for these products are also growing. Another opportunity for durum wheat in Morocco is for the production of various traditional baked breads that are used that use milled durum products such as semolina or durum flours. So with that, I'd like to turn it back over to Lisa, who's just going to talk a little bit more about our activities in Morocco.
Thanks, Elaine. Yeah, because Morocco is such a large customer, Cereals Canada provides ongoing programming and technical support to Moroccan customers. And just a few examples of that are region-specific technical exchanges where we bring Moroccan customers to Canada. We have a durum specific program every 2 years, and we will be having one this year. Moroccan customers are on that program. And then I mentioned new crop missions earlier, and we did do a new crop mission visit and seminar coordinated with the National Federation of Milling in Morocco, FMN. And it was held at one of their technical centers called IFM, which is the Milling Institute, Industry Training Institute in Casablanca. So lots of interaction with this very important market. And back to you, Mark.
Thanks, Lisa. Thanks, Elaine. Great job with all those acronyms, Lisa. I know they can get a little tricky from time to time. Now we'll head over to one of the world's most rapidly growing economies, Indonesia, where Leif and Lisa will give us a brief on that market's dynamics. Over to you, Leif.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, it's true. Indonesia is a really important country, and it's the most populous country in Southeast Asia. But for the Canadian cereals value chain, it's also important because Indonesia is our second largest market for non-durum wheat exports. Over the past 5 years, we've exported over 2 million tons of non-durum wheat each year to Indonesia, representing about 11% of our exports. And the demand has been good for a long time, but it's also been growing. Last year in 2024, Indonesia purchased over 2.4 million tons of non-durum wheat, worth over $900 million Canadian. For Indonesia, they really also prefer CWRS as their Canadian wheat of choice. Its flexibility allows it to be used in a number of end products. And Indonesia also buys modest amounts of durum, where it's turned into high quality pasta in that market. It's an important year for Canadian-Indonesian relationships in terms of trade, and especially agriculture trade. Wheat's always been at the forefront of Canada-Indonesia trade, and we've been active in that market for many years. And it's really been exciting to see how Canada and Indonesia are strengthening that trade relationship outside of wheat this year. I had the honor of representing Cereals Canada in our new crop mission to Indonesia in mid-December. And the week before I arrived, on December 2nd, 2024, Canada and Indonesia announced that we've completed negotiations toward a Canada-Indonesia Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, or a CEPA as it's called. And that's a really big announcement. For cereals, one of the key benefits that we've seen in the CEPA is that there's strong provisions on agricultural biotechnology, and that's the first time that Indonesia has included that sort of language in a trade agreement. The agreement certainly cements broad tariff-free access for Canadian cereals into that market. And it sets rules and approaches to setting sanitary and phytosanitary, what we call SPS regulations, and other rules, technical rules of trade. So Cereals Canada was supportive of this agreement, and we certainly hope that it can be ratified in 2025 and bring Canada and Indonesia's trade relationship even closer together. Indonesia is a big user of wheat. They can't, the climate and land aren't suitable for growing it themselves, so they import from a lot of countries, both for use in animal feed, and for Canada they import it for using for food products. Canadian wheat is used in competition and sometimes alongside wheat from Canada and Australia. They're our main competitors in that market. But Canada is a strong and stable market share, taking up about 20% of the Indonesian market share right now. But I'd like to invite Lisa to join and talk about what's happening with wheat consumption in Indonesia.
Thanks, Leif. Yeah, as I think you've touched on, Indonesia is a large market. It also has a growing population, and it is currently close to 280 million people. So coupling that with an expanding middle class, it's led to increased wheat consumption. Many Indonesians are opting for wheat-based products for breakfast through bread products instead of their traditional rice-based meals. And this has caused bread and pasta consumption to be continually on the rise. Instant noodles have also gained a lot of popularity in Indonesia. It is a cheaper product, especially favored among lower income families as an alternative to rice. And CWRS is used in instant noodles. Canadian wheat is preferred by the Indonesian bread sector due to its suitability for two processes. One is called no-time dough and the other is sponge and dough. Both are used in this market. Canadian wheat has the right protein functionality to work with both of these baking methods. And when we're visiting Indonesia, we receive a lot of positive feedback about the versatility and the good quality of Canadian wheat for their processing. So Canada Western Amber Durum is also purchased in this market for pasta production. It is used both at 100% in pasta, but also in blends with common wheat. And this pasta produced is consumed domestically and it is also exported. So some of the programming that we do, there is a new crop trade and technical mission visit with a seminar for the Indonesian market every year, as well as an additional seminar that is held and a visit with Bogasari flour mills. Bogasari is a very large company. It has at least 50% of the Indonesian flour milling capacity. And so that's why we do this individual seminar for them. Cereals Canada engages with key staff, including millers and executives in Indonesia every year through these new crop missions, or as part of our technical programming here in Winnipeg. In 2025, we will have a technical exchange specific to Bogasari, and in the alternate years, we will do one for the Indonesia industry. Back to you, Mark.
Thanks, folks. Next up is Bangladesh with Krista and Elaine.
Thanks, Mark. When we think about those markets, China, Japan, and Bangladesh are amongst our largest markets for Canadian non-durum wheat in the East Asian region. In 2024, Canadian non-durum wheat exports to Bangladesh actually reached their highest level in 30 years. Wheat demand in Bangladesh has been steadily increasing, but their domestic production has not kept pace. In recent years, the country has consumed more wheat than it has produced. So with this reliance on imported wheat and increased demand, it highlights the need to expand milling capacity. We were in Bangladesh at the end of 2024 for our new crop mission, and we got to hear firsthand about their experience with Canadian wheat, as well as their demand. And it was also announced around the same time that a new mill facility is planned for construction in Bangladesh, which is also aligned with the government of Bangladesh's goals of strengthening their domestic agro-processing industry. When we look at the last 5 years, Canada has exported 1.1 million tons of non-durum wheat to Bangladesh per year on average. This represents about 6% of Canada's average annual non-durum wheat exports. Bangladesh primarily imports our number 2 CWRS from Canada, which is used for blending with lower protein wheats from other regions like Russia and Ukraine. And to talk about this market in more detail, we'll hear from Elaine.
Thanks, Krista. I've traveled to Bangladesh since 2011 and have a good understanding of their quality needs. Bangladesh is a price-sensitive market and tends to import lower-cost, low-protein wheats, as Krista has mentioned. Millers rely on CWRS in Bangladesh as a high-protein improver wheat that is used in blends with these lower-protein wheats to improve the quality of the overall blend. It's important to recognize that mills around the world are constantly blending wheats from different origins in order to manage their costs, as well as the quality expectations of their customers. As Krista mentioned, Bangladesh is an important market for Canadian wheat, and Cereals Canada provides technical support to the mills in Bangladesh to ensure that they understand the functional quality as well as the value that CWRS provides to them. One of the biggest challenges that we see in Bangladesh is that they have high temperatures and high humidities, and these conditions have an impact on the storage of Canadian wheat in the mill silos. due to the higher moisture content in the Canadian wheat. And this is really relative to lower moisture contents that they see from wheats of other origins. When wheat has higher moisture content, its ability to be stored for long periods of time is decreased, and there can be possible decreases in quality during storage. Additionally, the high moisture content of Canadian wheat limits the ability of millers to add water to the wheat when they are preparing it for milling. Cereals Canada has provided webinars on storage and maintaining quality during storage, and we will continue to provide that information on proper storage practices to ensure that mills in Bangladesh are able to maintain the quality of CWRS during storage. As mentioned, we have a long history of providing support to mills in Bangladesh. Dhaka is a consistent stop on our annual new crop trade and technical missions. Our technical staff also recently provided a seminar and workshop for millers and bakers in Bangladesh at the end of January 2025. An additional way that we have provided support is through our Cereals Canada Guide to Milling, Analytical Testing, and Baking of Canadian Wheat. This is a guidebook that is available in both English and Bengali that provides an update to the first book that we prepared in 2012. The information that's provided in this guidebook provides the fundamentals of wheat, flour, and end product quality that's desperately needed in this market. And this is really the only available resource to mills and processors in this region that is available in Bengali. As Bangladesh has a growing middle class, there is a potential for the shift in dietary preferences and patterns that would mean a shift from rice consumption to consumption of wheat-based products and opportunities for increased production of these products as well. This could mean that there are increased opportunities for higher imports of Canadian wheat in the future. And with that, I'd like to turn it back over to Mark.
Thanks, Elaine. Thanks, Krista. So now that you've walked us through Bangladesh, before we take questions and move to the Q&A portion of our session, let's take a moment to hear from two of our customers that we've worked with at Cereals Canada.
So I learned about all the processes. We are not just buying wheat, we're buying wheat with ages of experience, with a lot of processes that guarantee that we can have the best product.
Donc, je suis Alaoui Moulay Abdelkader, je suis président de la Fédération nationale de la minoterie. Je suis également président directeur général de l'Institut de formation au métier de la boulangerie. Et ce que nous apprenons ici est simplement extraordinaire. Nous remercions le président, nous remercions Hélène, nous remercions toute l'équipe parce que nous sentons quand on est ici qu'on est en famille.
Thanks so much for taking the time to watch that video. I'd like to call the rest of the team on screen now for the question and answer portion of our webinar today. We've had a few questions come in through the chat, as well as some that have come in advance that we'd like to take some time to answer. And as a reminder, if we do not get to your question today, we will absolutely circle back with you because we have your email and we'll make sure to get to your question after the webinar concludes. A question that I'd like to pose to Krista that's come through, maybe just if you could walk us through what other markets are popular destinations for Canadian wheat.
Thanks, Mark. So I would say overall about half of our non-durum wheat exports go to our Asian countries. So China would be our largest buyer, and then often Japan and Indonesia compete to round out that top three. When we think about durum, I mean, Canadian durum is exported to all major durum consuming countries in the world. But with that, our top markets are typically Italy, Algeria, and Morocco, which we talked about today.
Thanks for that, Krista. Another question that's come through today that I'll pass over to Elaine. Why is Canadian wheat popular among buyers of wheat?
I mentioned earlier that Canadian wheat is considered a high quality wheat. So buyers around the world do recognize that it offers that. And one of the reasons why is the consistency and quality. We talk about that as shipment to shipment, they can expect similar quality to the previous shipment that they received, which is always very helpful that they're not having to make a lot of changes to their milling process or setup or blending situations. We also hear a lot from customers that they appreciate the cleanliness of Canadian wheat. And I think other pieces that fall into that are the strict or the grading standards that we have, as well as our variety registration system that helps us maintain that reputation for quality.
Thanks for that, Elaine. And I appreciate the patience of everyone on the webinar as I toggle between my mute button as well as the questions that have come in. So thank you for sticking with me. I'll pass this question over to Lisa. The question is, if we have all these core markets, Cereals Canada does do programming. Why do we need to continue with programming, and how does that work within our international positioning?
Sure, thanks, Mark. That's a great question and a very fair question. I think there's two main reasons why we need to continue programming with these core markets. The first is that our competitors are also working with these markets. They also would like to have greater market share as well. So we need, as an industry, to keep Canadian wheat quality top of mind. And we do that by visiting them and also bringing them in and showing them the great system that's behind the quality of our Canadian wheat. And they can take that back for their remembering why they're buying Canadian wheat. The other reason is that the people working in these different companies are in a constant state of change, as most industries are. So we will have people moving up into different positions in the company, new people coming in to replace them. And we need to be able to have this newer staff aware in their new positions why Canadian wheat should be their number one choice. But also the new people coming in need to be aware from us how we are providing them with the quality that they need, whether it be used at 100% or in blends with other products. There's also some potential changes in market needs that we can address by being in touch with them. A great example of that is Mexico this year, and being there in person to be able to talk to them right away about Canadian quality for durum, as it was being understood that they were going to need to bring Canadian durum in this year.
Fantastic. Thank you for that, Lisa. A question that's come in that I'll pose to Leif, and this was submitted in advance. Is there any way we can change our current production to distinguish us more in the global marketplace, i.e. protein levels, those sort of quality attributes?
It's a really important question, and one that we think about a lot at Cereals Canada. In some ways, Canadian wheat is already quite quite unique, and I'm looking at that from two perspectives. One is most of the wheat that we grow and export in Canada is of a high protein hard red spring variety, CWRS, that we've talked about so much. And in that, for hard red spring wheat, and particularly high protein with large volumes, it's Canada and the US that are the primary producers of that. So we're already in kind of a specialized segment. Canada represents about 12% of global wheat trade, but in the segments for high protein, Canada is a bigger player in that segment specifically. The other thing that makes Canadian wheat distinctive is its flexibility and the properties of the gluten. We've talked about how many countries it gets exported to, and part of that is because the gluten performance, a mix of strength, the resistance to extension, and the extensibility that you can move it and it still snaps back makes really good loaf breads, but it also is flexible enough to be used in so many different end products around the world. And that's kind of created a unique market space for Canadian wheat, particularly CWRS. And in terms of looking for market opportunities, that's something that Cereals Canada is engaged with when we talk to our customers. We also want to know what innovation, what areas that our customers are seeing change for their consumers.
Fantastic. Thanks for that, Leif. Just to the remaining Q&A questions that have come in, there are a number that unfortunately we're nearly at time that we won't be able to answer. However, we will follow up with you. They were all very good questions, and so we'll be diligently looking to get back to you shortly after the webinar. With that, perhaps I'll offer some closing comments. Connecting Canadian cereals value chain to our global customers is an integral part of the mandate of Cereals Canada. One way we do this is through our in-house programs, which are designed to create stronger connections between the value chain and our customers around the world. On today's webinar, we focused on 6 key markets, shared some of our insights and outcomes from programming and our engagement on behalf of the value chain. Market maintenance and development, along with market advocacy, are 2 of our 4 strategic pillars, and we want to share this information to our members, growers, and the value chain. To read Cereals Canada Markets Update, please go to our website. That is our time for today, folks. Thank you so much to all the presenters for sharing their insights, and to you, our members, growers, researchers, for all of your questions. Whether it's Combine to Customer program for farmers, the Grain Industry Overview course for Canadians working in agriculture, or presentations at the Prairie Grain Development Committee, Cereals Canada values the opportunities to engage with all stakeholders in the Canadian cereals value chain. If you do have further questions, please reach out to us by email. Our contact information can be found at cerealscanada.ca. Again, and specifically in response to a question that was posed in the chat, we will be sending you a link to the recording of this webinar. Please feel free to share it with your colleagues. You will also be receiving a short survey from our team. We look forward to the next time we can connect with you, either by Zoom, by email, or of course, in person. Have a great rest of your day. Thanks so much, everyone.